As you know, since Tyler's not tall enough to peep through a second-story window, sneaking out of my bedroom wasn't that hard to do. And that night, I just had to do it. But don't jump to conclusions. I've snuck out of my house before that night only twice. Okay, 3 times. Maybe 4. Tops. For those of you who don't know which party I'm talking about, there's a red star on your map. A big, fat red star, completely filled in. C6, 512, Cottonwood. Ah, so now you know. Some of you know exactly where you fit in. But you'll have to wait until your name pops up to hear what I'm going to tell. To hear how much I'm going to tell. That night, I decided that walking to the party would be nice. Relaxing. We had a lot of rain that week, and I remember the clouds were still hanging low and thick. The air was warm for that time of night, too. My absolute favorite type of weather. Pure magic. It's funny. Walking by the houses on my way to the party, it felt like life had so many possibilities. Limitless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope? Well, I guess I misread things a bit. It was simply the calm before the storm. I wore a black skirt and a matching hooded pullover. And on my way there, I took a 3-block detour to my old house. The one I lived in when we first moved to town. The first red star from the first side of the first tape. The porch light was on, and in the garage, a car's engine was running, but the garage door was shut. I stopped walking and, for what seemed like several minutes, just watched from the sidewalk. Mesmerized. Another family in my house. I had no idea who they were, or what they were like, what their lives were like. The garage door began to lift, and in the glow of the red taillights, the silhouette of a man pushed the heavy door all the way up. He got in the car, backed it down the driveway, and drove off. Why he didn't stop, why he didn't ask why I was standing there staring at his house, I don't know. Maybe he thought I was waiting for him to back out of the driveway before continuing on my merry way. But whatever the reason, it felt surreal. 2 people, me and him, 1 house. Yet he drove away, with no idea of his link to me, the girl on the sidewalk. And for some reason, at that moment, the air felt heavy, filled with loneliness, and that loneliness stayed with me through the rest of the night. Even the best moments of the night were affected by that one incident, by that non-incident in front of my old house. His lack of interest in me was a reminder. Even though I had a history in that house, it didn't matter. You can't go back to how things were, how you thought things were. All you really have is now, which explains my overreaction. Clay. And that's why you'll get these tapes, to explain, to say, I'm sorry. The party was well underway by the time I got there. Most people, unlike me, didn't have to wait for their parents to fall asleep. The usual crowd hung around the front door of the party, drunk out of their minds, greeting everyone with a raised cup of beer. I would think Hannah would be a hard name to slur, but those guys did it pretty well. Half of them kept repeating my name, trying to get it right, while the other half laughed. But they were harmless. Fun drunks make a nice addition to any party. Not looking to fight, not looking to score, just looking to get drunk and laugh. The music was loud, and no one was dancing. It could have been any party, except for one thing. Clay Jensen. I'm sure you heard a lot of the sarcastic remarks when you first arrived, but by the time I got there, to everyone else, you were just a part of the party. But unlike everyone else, you were the whole reason I came. With everything going on in my life, going on in my head, I wanted to talk to you. Really talk. Just once. A chance we never seem to get at school or at work. A chance to ask, "Who are you?" And as I stood in the kitchen, in line to fill my cup for the first time, you walked up behind me. "Hannah Baker," you said. And I turned toward you. "Hannah. Hey." I couldn't believe it. Out of the blue. There you were. "I don't know why," you said, "but I think we need to talk." And I agreed, with probably the dumbest smile plastered on my face. And then I noticed the doorframe behind you, leading into the kitchen. It had a bunch of pen and pencil marks scratched on it, keeping track of how fast the children in the house were growing. I remembered watching my mom erase those marks on our kitchen door, getting ready to sell the house, to move here. Anyway, you looked at my empty cup, poured half of your drink into mine, and asked if now would be a good time to talk. Please don't read into that, people. Yes, it sounds all smooth and get the girl drunk, but it wasn't. It didn't seem that way to me. But if that was the case, he would have encouraged me to fill my cup all the way. So we walked into the living room, where one side of the couch was occupied. But there was plenty of room on the other end, so we sat down. And what was the first thing we did? We set down our cups and started talking. Just like that. Everything I could have hoped for was happening. The questions were personal, as if catching up on time we let pass. Yet the questions were never intrusive. And they weren't intrusive because I wanted you to know me. It seemed like you could know me, like you could understand anything I told you. And the more we spoke, I knew why. The same things excited us. The same things concerned us. I wanted to tell you everything, and that hurt because some things were too scary. Some things even I didn't understand. How could I tell someone I was really talking to for the first time, everything I was thinking? I couldn't. It was too soon. Or maybe it was too late. Clay, you kept saying that you knew things would flow easily between us. You felt that way for a long time, you said. You knew we'd get along, that we would connect. But how? You never explained that. How could you know? Because I knew what people said about me. I heard all the rumors and lies that will always be a part of me. I was breaking. If only I'd talked to you sooner. We could have, I don't know. But things had gone too far by then. My mind was set, not on ending my life, not yet. It was set on floating through school, on never being close to anyone. That was my plan. I'd graduate, then I'd leave. But then I went to a party. I went to a party to meet you. But why did I do that? To make myself suffer? Because that's what I was doing. Hating myself for waiting so long. Hating myself because it wasn't fair to you. The couple sitting beside us on the couch. The girl was drunk and laughing and bumping into me every so often, which was funny at first, but it got old real fast. I started to think maybe she wasn't so drunk after all. Maybe it was all a show for the guy she was talking with, when they were actually talking. Maybe she wanted the couch all to herself and her guy. So Clay and I left. We walked around the party, shouting over the music wherever we went. Eventually, successfully, I spun the conversation around. No more big and heavy topics. We needed to laugh, but everywhere we went, it was too noisy to hear each other. So we wound up in the doorway to an empty room. While we were standing there, our backs against the doorframe, drinks in hand, we couldn't stop laughing. And yet the loneliness I've entered the party with came rushing back. But I wasn't alone. I knew that. For the first time in a long time, I was connected with another person from school. How in the world was I alone? Because I wanted to be. That's all I can say. It's all that makes sense to me. How many times had I let myself connect with someone only to have it thrown back in my face? Everything seemed good, but I knew it had the potential to be awful. Much, much more painful than the others. So there you were, letting me connect with you. And when I couldn't do that anymore, when I pulled the conversation to lighter topics, you made me laugh. And you were hilarious, Clay. You were exactly what I needed. So I kissed you. A long and beautiful kiss. And what did you say when we came up for our air? With the cutest, littlest, boyish smirk, you asked, "What was that for?" To which I said, "You're an idiot." And we kissed some more. Eventually, we shut the door and moved deeper into the room. We were on one side of the door, and the rest of the party, with its loud but muffled music, was on the other. Some of you may be wondering, how come we never heard about this? We always found out who Hannah made out with. Wrong. You only thought you found out. Haven't you been listening? Or did you only pay attention to the tape with your name on it? Because I can count on one hand. Yes, one hand. How many people I've made out with. But you probably thought I'd need both hands and both feet just to get started, right? What's that? You don't believe me? You're shocked? Guess what? I don't care. The last time I cared what anyone thought about me was that night. And that was the last night. Now get comfortable, because I'm about to tell you what happened in that room between Clay and me. Are you ready? We kissed. That's it. We kissed. It was wonderful. Both of us lying on the bed. One of his hands resting on my hip. His other arm cradling my head like a pillow. Both of my arms were hugging him, trying to pull him closer. And speaking for myself, I wanted more. The kisses felt like first kisses. Kisses that said I could start over if I wanted to. With him. But start over from what? And that's when I thought of you, Justin. For the first time in a long time, I thought of our first kiss. My real first kiss. I remembered the anticipation leading up to it. I remembered your lips press against mine. And then I remembered how you ruined it. Stop, I told Clay, and my hand stopped pulling him in. Could you feel what I was going through, Clay? Did you sense it? You must have. I shut my eyes so tight it was painful, trying to push away all that I was seeing in my head. And what I saw was everyone on this list, and more. Everyone up to that night. Everyone who caused me to be so intrigued by Clay's reputation. How his reputation was so different from mine. But I couldn't help that. What everyone thought of me was out of my control. Clay, your reputation was deserved, but mine was not. And there I was, with you, adding to my reputation. Stop, I repeated. This time, I moved my hands under your chest and pushed you away. I turned to the side, burying my face in the pillow. You started to talk, but I made you stop. I asked you to leave. You started to talk again, and I screamed. I screamed into the pillow. And then you stopped talking. You heard me. The bed lifted on your side as you got up to leave the room. But it took you forever to leave, to realize that I was serious. Even though my eyes were being shut, buried in the pillow. The light changed when you finally opened the door. It grew brighter. Then it faded again. And you were gone. And then I slid off the bed and down to the floor. I just sat there beside the bed, hugging my knees and crying. That, Clay, is where your story ends. You left the room, and we never spoke again. In the hallways at school, you tried catching my eye, but I always looked away. Because that night, when I got home, I tore a page from my notebook and wrote down one name after another, the names in my head when I stopped kissing you. There were so many names, Clay. 3 dozen at least. And then I made the connections. I circled your name first, Justin. And I drew a line from you to Alex. I circled Alex and drew a line to Jessica, bypassing names that didn't connect, that just floated there. Incidents all by themselves. My anger and frustration with all of you turned to tears, and then back to anger and hate every time I found a new connection. And then I reached Clay. The reason I went to the party. I circled his name and drew a line back to a previous name. In fact, Clay, soon after you left and shut the door, that person reopened it. But that person's already received the tapes. So Clay, just skip him when you pass them on. In a roundabout way, he caused a new name to be added to this list, and that's who should receive the tapes from you. And yes, Clay, I'm sorry too. Soon after Clay left, the couple from the couch walked into the bedroom. Actually, stumbled into the bedroom is more accurate. Remember them? I thought she was acting drunk, bumping into me so we'd get up and leave. Unfortunately, it wasn't an act. She was smashed. Of course, I didn't actually see them come in. I was still on the floor, my back against the far side of the bed, and it was dark. Her sofa buddy kept her from stumbling too hard into the nightstand, and when she rolled off the bed, twice, he lifted her back on. Nice guy he was. He kept the laughter to a minimum. I thought he would tuck her in and shut the door behind him as he left. And that would be the perfect time for my getaway. End of story. But that's not the end of the story, because that wouldn't make for a very interesting tape. Now would it? And by now, I'm sure you knew it wasn't the end. Instead of leaving, he started kissing her. I know, some of you would have easily stayed for such an amazing voyeuristic opportunity. A close encounter of the sexual kind. Even if you never saw it, at least you'd hear it. But two things kept me down on that floor, with my forehead pressed against my knees. I realized how much I must have drank that night. And with my balance not what it should have been, to run across the floor felt a little hazardous. So that's one excuse. Excuse number 2 is that things seemed to be winding down up there. Not only was she drunk and clumsy, she seemed to be completely unresponsive. From what I could tell, it didn't go much beyond kissing. And it seemed to be one-sided kissing at that. Again, nice guy that he was, he didn't take advantage of the situation. He wanted to. He tried for the longest time to get a reaction out of her. Are you still awake? Do you want me to take you to the bathroom? Are you gonna puke? This girl wasn't totally passed out. She grunted and groaned a bit. It dawned on him, finally, that she wasn't in a romantic mood and probably wouldn't be for a while. So he tucked her in and said he'd check on her in a bit. Then he left. At this point, you might be wondering, who are these people? Hannah, you forgot to tell us their names. But I didn't forget. If there's one thing I've still got, it's my memory. Which is too bad. Maybe if I forgot things once in a while, we'd all be a little happier. No, you'll have to wait for a name on this one. Though, if you've been paying close attention, I gave you the answer a long time ago. Before I say his name out loud, this guy needs to stew a bit, to remember everything that happened in that room. And he remembers. I know he does. I would love to see his face right now. His eyes shut tight, jaw clenched, fists pulling out his hair. And to him I say, deny it. Go on. Deny that I was ever in that room. Deny that I know what you did. Or not what you did, but what you didn't do. What you allowed to happen. Rationalize why this isn't the tape you're making a return appearance on. It must be a later tape. It has to be a later tape. Oh, really? And you'd like that? A later tape would make things better? Don't bet on it. I know she wasn't your girlfriend, that you hardly ever talked to her and barely even knew her. But is that your best excuse for what happened next? Or is that your only excuse? Either way, there is no excuse. I stood up, stabilizing myself with one hand on the bed. Your shoes, the shadow of your shoes, were still visible in the light coming under the door. Because when you left that room, you took a post right outside. I let go of the bed and started walking toward that sliver of light. Not sure what I'd say when I opened the door, but halfway there, 2 more shoes came into view, and I stopped. The door opened, but you pulled it back and said, "No, let her rest." In that tiny burst of light, I saw a closet, its accordion doors halfway open. Meanwhile, your friend was convincing you to let him into that room. I waited, heart pounding, trapped in the middle of the floor. The bedroom door opened again, but again you pulled it shut. And you tried to make a joke of it. "Trust me," you said. "She won't move. She'll just lay there." And what was his response? What was it? What was his reasoning for you to step aside and let him into that room? Do you remember? Because I do. It was the night shift. He told you he was working the night shift, and he had to leave in a few minutes. A few minutes, that's all he needed with her. So just relax and step aside. And that's all it took for you to let him open that door. Pathetic. I couldn't believe it. And your friend couldn't believe it either, because he grabbed the doorknob again. He didn't rush right in. He waited for you to protest. In that brief moment, the moment you said nothing, I fell on my knees, sick, covering my mouth with both hands. I stumbled towards the closet, tears blurring the light from the hall. And when I collapsed into the closet, a pile of jackets on the floor caught me. When the bedroom door opened, I pulled the closet door shut, and I shut my eyes tight, blood pounding in my ears. I rocked back and forth, beating my forehead into the pile of jackets. But with the bass pumping through the house, no one heard me. And with the bass thumping, no one heard him walking across the room, getting on the bed springs screaming under his weight. No one heard a thing. And I could have stopped it if I could have talked, if I could have seen, if I could have thought about anything. I would have opened those doors and stopped it. But I didn't. And it doesn't matter what my excuse was. That my mind was in a meltdown is no excuse. And I have no excuse. I could have stopped it. End of story. But to stop it, I felt that I'd have to stop the entire world from spinning. Like things had to be out of control for so long that whatever I did hardly mattered anymore. And I couldn't stand all the emotions anymore. I wanted the world to stop, to end. I don't know how many songs went by with my face buried in those jackets. The beats kept sliding from one song into another. After a while, my throat felt so scratched, so raw and burning. Had I been screaming? With my knees on the floor, I felt vibrations whenever anyone walked down the hall. And when footsteps fell within the room, several songs after he entered the room, I pressed my back against the closet wall, waiting for the closet doors to be torn open, to be yanked out of my hiding place. And then, what would he do to me then? But light from the hallway seeped into the room, into the closet, and his footsteps walked away. It was over. After all, he couldn't be late for work, could he? So what happened next? Well, I ran out of the room and straight down the hall. And that's where I saw you, sitting in a room all by yourself. The person this whole tape revolves around. Justin Foley. Sitting on the edge of a bed, the lights turned off. There you were, sitting there, staring at nothing, while I stood in the hallway, frozen, staring at you. We'd come a long way, Justin. From the first time I watched you slip on Kat's lawn, to my first kiss at the bottom of the slide, to now. First, you started a chain of events that ruined my life. Now you are working on hers. Eventually, you turned my way. The color in your face, gone. Your expression, blank. And your eyes looked so exhausted. Or was it pain I saw there? Justin, baby, I'm not blaming you entirely. We're in this one together. We both could have stopped it. Either one of us. We could have saved her. And I'm admitting this to you, to all of you. That girl had 2 chances. And both of us let her down. So why is this tape about Justin? What about the other guy? Isn't what he did worse? Yes. Absolutely yes. But the tapes need to be passed on. Now, if I sent them to him, they would stop, think about it, and would leave town in a second if he knew. Well, if he knew that we knew. So what do you think of him now, Justin? Do you hate him? Is he still your friend? Yes? But why? It must be denial. It has to be. Sure, he's always had a temper. Sure, he goes through girls like used underwear. But he's always been a good friend to you. The more you hang out with him, the more he seems like the same old guy from before, right? And if he acts like the same guy, then he couldn't possibly have done anything wrong. Which means that you didn't do anything wrong either. Great! That's great news, Justin. Because if he didn't do anything wrong, and you didn't do anything wrong, then I didn't do anything wrong. And you have no idea how much I wish I didn't ruin that girl's life. But I did. At the very least, I helped. And so did you. But you and I, we let it happen. It's our fault. Back to the party, everyone. But don't get too comfy. We'll be leaving in just a minute. If time was a string connecting all your stories, that party would be the point where everything knots up. And that knot keeps growing and growing,
getting more and more tangled, dragging the rest of your stories into it. When Justin and I finally broke that awful, painful stare, I wandered down the hall and back into the party. Staggered in, really, but not from the alcohol, from everything else. I grabbed for the piano in the living room, then the piano bench, and I sat. I wanted to leave, but where would I go? I couldn't go home. Not yet. And wherever I went, how would I get there? I was too weak to walk. At least, I thought I was too weak. But in truth, I was too weak to try. The only thing I knew for certain was that I wanted to get out of there and not think about anything or anyone anymore. Then a hand touched my shoulder, a gentle squeeze. It was Jenny Kurtz. Jenny, this one's for you. Jenny asked if I needed a ride home, and I almost laughed. Was it so obvious? Did I look that terrible? I looped my arm in hers, and she helped me up, which felt good, letting someone help me. We walked out the front door, through a crowd either passed out on the porch or smoking in the yard. The sidewalk was damp. My feet, numb and heavy, shuffled across the pavement. I listened to the sound of every pebble and leaf that I stepped on. I wanted to hear them all, to block out the music and the voices behind me. Jenny, you didn't say a thing. You didn't ask me any questions. And I was so grateful. Maybe you've had things happen, or seen things happen at parties that you just couldn't discuss. Not right away, at least. Which is sort of fitting, because I haven't discussed any of this until now. Well, no. I tried. I tried once, but he didn't want to hear it. So Jenny, you led me to your car, and even though my thoughts were somewhere else, my eyes focused on nothing, I felt your touch. You held my arm with such tenderness as you lowered me into the passenger seat. You buckled me in, got in your seat, then we left. What happened next, I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't paying attention, because in your car, I felt secure. The air inside was warm and comforting. The wiper blades, on a slow speed, gently pulled me out of my thoughts and into the car, into reality. The rain wasn't heavy, but it blurred the windshield just enough to keep everything dreamlike. And I needed that. It kept my world from becoming too real too fast. And then it hit. There's nothing like an accident to bring the world crashing back. The front wheel on my side slammed into and jumped the curb. A wooden post smacked into your front bumper and snapped like a toothpick. A stop sign fell backward in front of your headlights. It caught under your car and you screamed and slammed on the brakes. In the side mirror, I watched sparks fly on the road as we slid to a stop. Okay, now I'm awake. We sat for a moment, staring through the windshield. No words, not a glance between us. The wipers smeared the rain from side to side, and my hands stayed gripped to the seatbelt, thankful we only hit a sign. Your door opened, and I watched you walk to the front of your car, then crouch between the headlights for a closer look. You ran a hand under the dent and let your head droop forward. I couldn't tell if you were pissed, or were you crying? Maybe you were laughing at how horrible the night was turning out. The dent wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't good, but you had to feel some relief. It could have been worse. It could have been much, much worse. For example, you could have hit something else, something alive. Whatever your initial thoughts, you stood up with a blank expression, just standing there, staring at the dent, shaking your head. Then you caught my eye, and I'm sure I saw a frown, even it lasted only a split second. But that frown turned into a smile, followed by a shrug. And what were the first words you said when you got back into the car? Well, that sucks. Then you put your key in the ignition, and I stopped you. I couldn't let you drive away. You shut your eyes and said, "Hannah, I'm not drunk." Well, I didn't accuse you of being drunk, Jenny. But I was wondering why the hell you couldn't keep your car on the road. It's raining, you said. Yes, true, it was. Barely. I told you to park the car. You told me to be reasonable. We both live close by, and you'd stick to the residential streets. As if that made it any better. Hannah, don't worry, you said. Then you laughed. Nobody obeys stop signs anyway. They just roll on through. So now, because there isn't one there, it's legal. See? People will thank me. Again, I told you to park the car. We'd get a ride from someone at the party. I'd pick you up first thing in the morning and drive you to your car. But you tried again. Hannah, listen. Park it, I said. Please. And then you told me to get out. But I wouldn't. I tried reasoning with you. You were lucky it was a sign. Imagine what could happen if I let you drive us all the way home. But again, get out. I sat for a long time with my eyes shut, listening to the rain and the wipers. Hannah, get out. So finally I did. I opened the car door and stepped out. But I didn't shut it. I looked back at you, and you stared through your windshield, through the wipers, gripping the wheel. I asked if I could use your phone. I saw it sitting there right below the stereo. Why? You asked. I'm not sure why I told you the truth. I should have lied. I need to at least tell someone about the sign, I said. You kept your eyes straight ahead. They'll trace it. They can trace phone calls, Hannah. Then you started up the car and told me to shut the door. I didn't. So you reversed the car, and I jumped back to keep the door from knocking me over. You didn't care that the metal sign was crushing, grating the underside of your car. When you cleared it, the sign lay at my feet, warped and streaked with silver scratches. You revved the engine, and I took the hint, stepping back onto the curb. Then you peeled away, causing the door to slam shut, picking up speed the further you got. And you got away. In fact, you got away with much more than knocking down a sign, Jenny. And once again, I could have stopped it. Somehow. There must have been something I could have said. At the very least, I could have taken your keys. Or at the very, very least, I could have reached in and stolen your phone to call the police. Actually, that's the only thing that would have mattered. Because you found your way home in one piece, Jenny. But that wasn't the problem. The sign was knocked down. And that was the problem. B6 on your map. 2 blocks from the party, there's a stop sign. But on that night, for part of the night, there wasn't. And it was raining. And someone was trying to deliver his pizzas on time. And someone else, headed in the opposite direction, was turning. There was no stop sign on that corner. Not on that night. And one of the drivers, died. I never knew that guy in that car. He was a senior. And when I saw his picture in the newspaper, I didn't recognize him. Just one of the many faces at school I never got to know. And never would. I didn't go to his funeral either. Yes, maybe I should have, but I didn't. I couldn't. And now, I'm sure it's obvious why. But some of you were there, at his funeral. For those of you who did go, let me describe what school was like on the day of his funeral. In a word, it was quiet. After a quarter of the school took the morning off, mostly seniors, of course, but for those of us who did go to school, the teachers let us know that if we simply forgot to bring a note from home, they wouldn't mark us as absent if we wanted to attend the funeral. Mr. Porter said funerals could be a part of the healing process, but I doubted that very much. Not for me, because on that corner, there wasn't a stop sign that night. Someone had knocked it over, and someone else, yours truly, could have stopped it on the day of the funeral, so those of you who attended wouldn't miss any work. The rest of us did nothing. In every class, the teachers gave us free time. Free to write, free to read, free to think. And what did I do? For the first time, I thought about my own funeral. More and more, in very general terms, I've been thinking about my own death. Just the fact of dying. But on that day, with all of you at the funeral, I began thinking of my own. I could picture life, school, and everything else continuing on without me. But I could not picture my funeral. Not at all. Mostly because I couldn't imagine who would attend or what they would say. I have no idea what you think of me. It's now been a couple of weeks since the party. So far, Jenny, you've done a great job of hiding from me. I suppose it's understandable. You'd like to forget what we did. What happened with your car and the stop sign. The repercussions. But you never will. I, on the other hand, only have to think about it for one more day. If I had known 2 cars were going to crash on that corner, I would have run back to the party and called the cops immediately. But I never imagined that would happen. Never. So instead, I walked, but not back to the party. My mind was racing all over the place. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't walk straight. I turned corner after corner with no idea where I was going. Eventually, I made it to a gas station. C7 on your map. I used a payphone to call the police. As it rang, I found myself hugging the receiver, part of me hoping that no one would answer. I wanted to wait. I wanted the phone to just keep ringing. I wanted life to stay right there, on pause. When someone finally did answer, I sucked in the tears that wet my lips and told them that on the corner of Tanglewood and South. But she cut me off. She told me to calm down. And that's when I realized how hard I had been crying, how much I was struggling to catch one good breath. She told me the cops had already been called and were on their way. I was shocked. I couldn't believe you actually called the police, Jenny. But I shouldn't have been shocked, because as it turns out, you didn't call them. At school the next day, when everyone replayed the events of what happened the previous night, that's when I found out who had called. And it wasn't to report a fallen sign. It was to report an accident. An accident caused by a fallen sign. An accident I was never aware of until then. But that night, after hanging up the phone, I wandered the streets some more because I had stopped crying. Before I went home, I needed to calm down. If my parents caught me sneaking back in with tears in my eyes, they'd ask way too many questions. Unanswerable questions. So I walked without thinking about which roads to take, and it felt good. The cold, the mist. That's what the rain had turned into by then. A light mist. And I walked for hours, imagining the mist growing thick and swallowing me whole. The thought of disappearing like that, so simply, made me so happy. But that, as you know, never happened.
Just 2 more to go. Don't give up on me now. I'm sorry. I guess that's an odd thing to say. Because isn't that what I'm doing? Giving up? Yes. As a matter of fact, I am. And that, more than anything else, is what this all comes down to. Me giving up on me. No matter what I've said so far, no matter who I've spoken of, it all comes back to, it all ends with me. Before that party, I'd thought about giving up so many times. I don't know. Maybe some people are just preconditioned to think about it more than others. Because every time something bad happened, I thought about it. It? Okay, I'll say it. I thought about ending it. After everything I've talked about on these tapes, everything that occurred, I thought about ending it. Usually, it was just a passing thought. I wish I would die. But sometimes I took things further and wondered how I would do it. I would tuck myself into bed and wonder if there was anything in the house I could use. A gun? No. We never owned one. And I wouldn't know where to get one. What about hanging? Well, what would I use? Where would I do it? And even if I knew what and where, I could never get beyond the visual of someone finding me, swinging, inches from the floor. I couldn't do that to Mom and Dad. It became a sick sort of game, imagining ways to end myself. And there are some pretty weird and creative ways. It came down to 2 lines of thinking. If I wanted people to think it was an accident, I'd drive my car off the road, someplace where there's no chance of survival. And there are so many places to do that on the outskirts of town. I've probably driven by each of them a dozen times in the past couple of weeks. Then there are these tapes. Can I trust the 12 of you to keep a secret? To not let my parents find out what really happened? Will you let them believe it was an accident, if that's the story going around? I don't know. I'm not sure. So I've decided on the least painful way possible. Pills. But what kind of pills? And how many? I'm not sure. And I don't have much time to figure it out because tomorrow I'm gonna do it. Wow. I won't be around anymore. Tomorrow, I'm getting up. I'm getting dressed.
and I'm walking to the post office. There, I'll mail a bunch of tapes to Justin Foley. And after that, there's no turning back. I'll go to school, too late for the first period, and we'll have one last day together. The only difference being that I'll know it's the last day. You won't. And you'll treat me how you've always treated me. Do you remember the last thing you said to me? The last thing you did to me? And what was the last thing I said to you? Because trust me, when I said it, I knew it was the last thing I'd ever say. Which brings us to one of my very last weekends. The weekend following the accident. The weekend of a new party. A party I didn't attend.
Yes, I was still grounded. But that's not the reason I didn't go. In fact, if I wanted to go, it would have been much easier than last time, because I was house sitting that weekend. A friend of my father's was out of town, and I was watching his house for him, feeding his dog, and keeping an eye on things, because there was supposed to be a rager a few doors down. And there was. Maybe not as big as the last party, but definitely not one for beginners. I've heard people say that after a particularly bad experience with tequila, just the smell of it can make them barf. And while this party didn't make me barf, just being near it, just hearing it, twisted my stomach into knots. 1 week was nowhere near enough time to get over the last party. The dog was going crazy, yapping every time someone walked by the window. I would crouch down, yelling at him to get away from there, but was too afraid to go over and pick him up. Too afraid someone might see me and call my name. So I put the dog in the garage, where he could yap all he wanted. The bass thumping down the block was impossible to shut out, but I tried. I ran through the house, closing the curtains and twisting shut every blind I could find. Then I hid myself in the bedroom with the TV blasting, and even though I couldn't hear it, I could feel the bass pumping inside of me. I shut my eyes tight. I wasn't watching the TV anymore. I wasn't in that room anymore. I could only think back to that closet, hiding inside it with a pile of jackets surrounding me. And once again, I started rocking back and forth, and once again, no one was around to hear me cry. Eventually, the party died down, and after everyone walked by the window again, the dog stopped yapping. I walked through the house, reopening the curtains. After being shut in for so long, I decided to catch a breath of fresh air, and maybe, in turn, be a hero. Once again, everybody, D4, Courtney Crimson's house, the site of this party. No, this tape is not about Courtney, though she does play a part. But Courtney has no idea what I'm about to say, because she left just as things got going. My plan was to just walk by the place. Maybe I'd find someone struggling to put a key in their car door, and I'd give them a ride home. But the street was empty. Everyone was gone. Or so it seemed. And then someone called my name. Over the tall wooden fence at the side of her house, a head poked up. And whose head would that be? Bryce Walker's. "Where are you going?" he asked. My body, my shoulders, Everything was set to keep walking by that house. And I should have kept walking. But my face turned toward him. There was steam rising from the side of the fence. "Come on, join us," he said. "We're sobering up." But whose head should pop up beside him? Miss Courtney Crimson's. Now there was a coincidence. She's the one who used me as a chauffeur to attend a party. And there I was, crashing her after party. She's the one who left me stranded with no one to talk to. And there I was, at her house, where she had nowhere to hide. But who am I to hold a grudge? He said you were all just relaxing a bit. Then you, Courtney, offered to give me a ride home when we were done, not realizing home was only 2 houses away. And you sounded so genuine, which surprised me. It even made me feel a little guilty. I was willing to forgive you, Courtney. I do forgive you. In fact, I forgive almost all of you. But you still need to hear me out. You still need to know. I walked across the wet grass and pulled a latch on the fence, popping the gate open a few inches. And behind it, the source of the steam, a redwood hot tub. The jets weren't on, so the only sound was the water lapping against the sides, against the 2 of you. Your heads were back, resting on the edge of the hot tub. Your eyes were shut, and the little smiles on your faces made the water and steam look so inviting. Courtney rolled her head my way, but kept her eyes shut. "We're in our underwear," she said. I waited a second. Should I? No. But I will. I took off my top, pulled off my shoes, took off my pants, and climbed the wooden steps. And then I descended into the water. It felt so relaxing, so comforting. I cupped the hot water in my hands and let it drip over my face. I pushed it back through my hair. I forced my eyes to shut, my body to slide down, and my head to rest against the ledge. But with the calming water also came terror. I should not be here. I didn't trust Courtney. I didn't trust Bryce. No matter what their original intentions, I knew them each well enough not to trust them for long. And I was right not to trust them. But I was done. I was through fighting. I opened my eyes and looked up at the night sky. Through the steam, the whole world seemed like a dream. Before long, the water became uncomfortable, too hot. But when I pushed my back against the tub and sat up to cool my upper body, I could see my breasts through my wet bra. So I slid back down. And Bryce slid over, slowly, across the underwater bench, and his shoulder rested against mine. Courtney opened her eyes, looked at us, then shut them again. Bryce's words were soft, an obvious attempt at romance. "Hannah Baker," he said. "Everyone knows who you are, Bryce. Everyone knows what you do. But I, for the record, did nothing to stop you." "You asked if I had fun at the party." Courtney whispered that I wasn't at the party, but you didn't seem to care. Instead, your fingertips touched the outside of my thigh. I clenched my jaw, and your fingers moved away. "It broke up pretty fast," you said. And just as fast, your fingertips were back. Your whole hand was back. And when I didn't stop you,
You slid your hand across my belly, your thumb touching the bottom of my bra, and your pinky touching the top of my underwear. I had turned my head sideways, away from you, and I know I didn't smile. You pulled your fingers together and rubbed slow, full circles around my stomach. Feels nice, you said. I felt a shift in the water and opened my eyes for one brief second. Courtney was walking away. Remember when you were a freshman? You asked. Your fingers made their way under my bra, but you didn't grab me. Testing the boundaries, I guess. Sliding your thumb along the underside of my breasts. Weren't you on that list, you said? Best ass in the freshman class. Bryce had to see my jaw clench. He had to see my tears. Does that shit turn you on? It's true, you said. And then, just like that, I let go. My shoulders went limp. My legs fell apart. I knew exactly what I was doing. Not once had I given in to the reputation you'd all set for me. Not once. Even though sometimes it was hard. Even though sometimes I found myself attracted to someone who only wanted to get with me because of what they'd heard. But I always said no to those people. Always. Until Bryce. So congratulations, Bryce. You're the one. I let my reputation catch up with me. I let my reputation become me. With you. How does it feel? Wait. Don't answer that. Let me say this first. I was not attracted to you, Bryce. Ever. In fact, you disgusted me. You were touching me, but I was using you. I needed you so I could let go of me completely. For everyone listening, let me be clear. I did not say no or push his hand away. All I did was turn my head, clench my teeth, and fight back tears. And he saw that. He even told me to relax. Just relax, he said. Everything will be okay. As if letting him finger me was going to be the cure to all my problems. But in the end, I never told you to get away. And you didn't. You stopped rubbing circles on my stomach. Instead, you rubbed back and forth gently along my waist. Your pinky made its way under the top of my panties and rolled back and forth from hip to hip. Then another finger slipped below, pushing your pinky further down, brushing it through my hair. That's all you needed, Bryce? You started kissing my shoulder, my neck, sliding your fingers in and out, and then you kept going. You didn't stop there. I'm sorry. Is this getting too graphic for some of you? Too bad. When you were done, Bryce, I got out of the hot tub and walked 2 houses away. The night was over. I was done. One last try. I'm giving life one more chance. And this time, I'm getting help. I'm asking for help because I cannot do this alone. I've tried that. And of course, if you're listening to this, I failed.
or he failed. And if he fails, the deal is sealed. Only one person stands between you and this collection of audio tapes. Mr. Porter, let's see how you do.
Hannah, glad you could make it. Come in, sit here. Are you comfortable? Do you want some water?
I'm fine, thank you.
So, Hannah, how can I help you? What would you like to talk about?
Well, I don't know really. Just everything, I guess.
That might take a while. Hannah, it's okay. I've got as much time as you need, whenever you're ready.
It's just things. Everything's so hard right now. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I kind of do. But there's so much. And I don't know how to sum it all up.
You don't need to sum it all up. Why don't we begin with how you're feeling today?
Right now?
Right now.
Right now, I feel lost, I guess. Sort of empty.
Empty how?
Just empty. Just nothing. I don't care anymore.
About?
About anything. School. Myself. The people in my school.
What about your friends?
You're going to have to define friends if you want an answer to that question.
Don't tell me you don't have friends, Hannah. I see you in the halls.
Seriously. I need a definition. How do you know what a friend is?
Someone you can turn to when...
Then I don't have any. That's why I'm here, isn't it? I'm turning to you.
Yes, you are. And I'm glad you're here, Hannah.
You don't know how hard it was to set up this meeting.
My schedule has been fairly open this week.
Not hard to schedule. Hard to get myself here.
Again, I'm glad you're here, Hannah. So tell me, when you leave this office, how do you want things to be different for you?
You mean, how can you help?
Yes.
I guess I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm expecting.
Well, what do you need right now that you're not getting? Let's start there. You need what to stop?
I need everything to stop. People. Life.
Hannah, do you know what you just said? You said you wanted life to stop, Hannah. Your life? Is that what you meant to say, Hannah? Those are very serious words, you know.
I know. They are. I'm sorry. I don't want my life to end. That's why I'm here.
So what happened, Hannah? How did we get here?
We? Or how did I get here?
You, Hannah. How did you get to this point? I know you can't sum it all up. It's a snowball effect, am I right? It's one thing on top of another. It's too much, isn't it?
It's too hard.
Life? Here, take this. An entire box of tissues just for you. Never been used.
Thank you.
Let's talk about school, Hannah. So I can get some idea how how you got to this point.
Okay.
When you think of school, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Learning, I guess.
Well, that's good to hear.
I'm kidding. I do learn here. But that's not what school is for me.
Then what is it for you?
A place. Just a place filled with people that I'm required to be with.
And that's hard for you?
At times.
With certain people or people in general?
With certain people, but also everyone.
Can you be a little more specific?
It's hard because I don't know who's going to, get me next. Or how.
What do you mean, get you?
Not like a conspiracy or anything. But it feels like I never know when something's going to pop out of the woodwork.
And get you?
I know. It sounds silly.
Then explain.
It's hard to explain unless you've heard some of the rumors about me.
I haven't. Teachers, especially teacher moonlighting as a counselor, tend to get left out of student gossip. Not that we don't have our own gossip.
About you?
It depends. What have you heard?
Nothing. I'm joking.
But you'll tell me if you hear anything.
I promise.
When was the last time a rumor popped up?
See, that's it. Not all of them are rumors.
Okay.
No. Listen. Years ago, I was voted, in one of those polls. Well, not really a poll, but someone's stupid idea of a list. A best of and worst of thing. And people have been reacting to it ever since.
When was the last time?
Recently. At a party. I swear, one of the worst nights of my life.
Because of a rumor?
So much more than a rumor. But partly, yes.
Can I ask you what happened at this party?
It wasn't really during the party. It was after.
Okay, Hannah. Can we play 20 questions?
What?
Sometimes it's hard for people to open up, even to a counselor, where everything is strictly confidential.
Okay.
So can we play 20 questions?
Yes.
At this party you mentioned, are we talking about a boy?
Yes. But again, it wasn't during the party.
I understand that, but we need to start somewhere.
Okay.
I'm not going to judge you, Hannah, but did anything happen that night that you regret?
Yes.
Did anything happen with this boy? And you can be totally honest with me, Hannah. Did anything happen that might be considered illegal?
You mean non-consensual? No, I don't think so.
Why don't you know?
Because there were circumstances.
Alcohol?
Maybe, but not with me.
Drugs?
No, just more circumstances.
Are you thinking of pressing charges?
No, No.
Then what are your options?
I don't know.
What can we do to solve this problem, Hannah?
Nothing. It's over.
Something needs to be done, Hannah. Something needs to change for you.
I know. But what are my options? I need you to tell me.
Well, if you won't press charges, if you're not sure if you can press charges, then you have two options.
What? What are they?
One, you can confront him. We can call him in here to discuss what happened at this party. I can call both of you out of...
You said there were two options.
Or two. And I'm not trying to be blunt here, Hannah, but you can move on.
You mean do nothing? You mean do nothing?
It is an option, and that's all we're talking about. Look, something happened, Hannah. I believe you. But if you won't press charges and you won't confront him, you need to consider the possibility of moving beyond this.
Moving beyond this.
Is he in your class, Hannah?
He's a senior.
So he'll be gone next year.
You want me to move beyond this? Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Hannah, wait, you don't need to leave.
I think I'm done here. I got what I came for.
I think there's more we can talk about, Hannah.
No. I think we figured it out. I need to move on and get over it.
Not get over it, Hannah, but sometimes there's nothing left to do but move on.
You're right. I know.
Hannah, I don't understand why you're in such a hurry to leave.
Because I need to get on with things, Mr. Porter. If nothing's going to change, then I'd better get on with it. Right?
Hannah, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about my life, Mr. Porter.
Hannah, wait.
I'm walking down the hallway. His door is closed behind me. It's staying closed. He's not coming. I think I've made myself very clear, but no one's stepping forward to stop me. A lot of you cared, just not enough. And that is what I needed to find out. And I did find out, and I'm sorry. Thank you.